In the spring of 1993, the authorities became involved for the first time in a shocking case. Two newspaper carriers accidentally discovered the lifeless body of an abandoned and beaten newborn baby on a desolate, snowy country road in Geauga County, Ohio. This crime changed the community forever. The community adopted this unknown baby as their own, and a combination of new technology and old-fashioned police work led to a breakthrough 26 years later, eventually leading them to Gail's home, Eastwood. On the morning of March 25, 1993, Cheryl Jenkins and Wendy Sweeney were delivering newspapers along Sidley Road in Thompson Township, Geauga County, Ohio. This is a quiet rural area surrounded by forest, making it an ideal spot to dump something without attracting too much attention. When they passed by an object on the side of the road, they initially mistook it for a doll. When they returned for a second look, something shifted in the pit of their stomachs. What they had initially dismissed as an old, lifeless doll now struck them as disturbingly real. The contours of its tiny body, the unnatural stillness, and the faint glint in the half-closed eyes suddenly took on a chilling new meaning. It wasn't a doll at all, it was a child, unnervingly silent, motionless as if frozen in time. Their breath hitched in their throats as cold dread washed over them. Panic surged through their veins, and with trembling hands they fumbled for their phone, desperately dialing the police. Each second felt agonizingly slow, the air thick with terror, as they struggled to comprehend the horrific reality before them. When police arrived at the scene, they discovered a newborn baby lying in the middle of the road with tire marks on his small body. The child was found in a trash bag, having likely lost his arms and legs to animals. Police determined that the child had been lying outside for at least 12 hours. Cheryl and Wendy are outraged that someone could commit such a terrible act against an innocent child. Detectives initially suspected that the child's mother may have met a similar fate and scoured the woods for more evidence. However, the search yielded no results. When the body was autopsied, detectives began to wonder if this could have been the work of someone in the baby's family. Geauga County Sheriff George "Red" Simmons held a press conference the same day to ask for the public's help in identifying the child. Autopsy reports said the child was between 1 and 3 days old and was born alive. Despite a thorough investigation, police were unable to determine the exact cause of death. It's unclear whether the newborn died when abandoned or succumbed to the harsh elements after being left in the cold. News of the child's tragic fate attracted the attention of people across Northeast Ohio. Even though they didn't know the child, the community wanted justice for him. The Geauga County Sheriff's Office issued a heartfelt appeal to the child's mother, offering support and guidance to prevent further harm, but no one came forward. Police interviewed people in the area and contacted police agencies across the state to check on any reports of missing infants. They also contacted hospitals to get a list of births in the past 3 months in many districts, but the boy's origins remained a mystery. An alarm line was set up and leaflets were distributed in the hope of gathering information. These efforts brought in several calls from the public, including 2 from bus drivers who saw something unusual on their route the morning the baby was found. Investigators have had difficulty gathering concrete evidence despite promising leads. They looked at 34 individuals and issued 24 subpoenas but eventually hit a brick wall. Despite all their manpower and diligence, they could not find anyone who could abandon a child in such a terrible condition. The identity of the abandoned boy remains a mystery, but his death deeply affected the community. They decided to name him Child of Geauga after the county to give him a sense of belonging and honor his memory. A few months later, in November 1993, the community came together for a funeral at a local church with about 130 people in attendance to pay their respects and say goodbye to the child who had touched so many hearts. Surname: This child suffered at the hands of uncaring people, but was loved and cared for by the community. Even during the funeral, detectives remained vigilant in the hope of finding some clues. They thought a family member might show up, so they camped out in the church parking lot and secretly recorded people coming to pay their respects. However, this activity did not bring any significant breakthroughs. When the church service ended, 2 members of the sheriff's office solemnly carried the small white casket out of the church. The community raised money for a burial and headstone, ensuring the child received a dignified farewell. On one side of the tombstone are several touching poems read about the Geauga child, with the message that although it is too late to save his life, it is not too late to teach all to love and appreciate life. Even though the child has been laid to rest, the case remains. It will continue to work until people find out the truth. The widespread attention surrounding the Geauga child did not alleviate the sense of guilt among the parents that investigators had tried to instill. They set up cameras at the child's grave, trying to catch someone sneaking back to pay their respects over the months and years. Many people leave flowers, toys, and homemade clothes at the gravesite, but never provide any significant clues. Over the years, investigators tirelessly pursued every lead, leaving no avenue unexplored. They diligently explored hundreds of potential avenues, including visiting schools to investigate any undisclosed teenage pregnancies, but had no luck. Thomas Dewey, the detective assigned to this assignment, made every effort to keep the investigation in the public eye. There was a time when he felt they were close to solving the case when a tip led in authorities all the way to Arizona to track down one man. However, this lead only leads to another dead end. Investigators still refuse to give up hope, pursuing every avenue, no matter how strange the discovery. Even suggestions from Nancy Meyer, a psychic investigator, were considered valuable. However, the case remained without significant progress until advances in DNA technology revolutionized the criminal justice system. In 2005, Detective Dewey, although retired, still often visited the gravesite. Detective Don Seaman took over the case and continued to pursue every lead. The real breakthrough in the case came in 2018 when forensic genealogists began to crack long-standing mysteries like the Golden State case. Seaman, the investigating detective, saw the technology's potential in identifying the Geauga child. He approached the police chief and prosecutor thinking that this new investigative technique was worth a try. At a cost of $5,000, they decided to use the technology to obtain a DNA profile and hopefully solve the case. In September 2018, the process of submitting DNA samples began. The Geauga County Medical Examiner's Office held the DNA of these teeth from the Geauga child, and that DNA was deemed suitable for comparison, according to dental experts, as teeth are considered the most reliable source of DNA. The preservation of crucial evidence in this case was considered groundbreaking for its time, and with such advanced forensic techniques, hopes ignited. Investigators believed they were on the cusp of a significant breakthrough. Adding to their optimism was the result of a comprehensive DNA analysis, which revealed that the baby was of Middle Eastern descent, potentially with strong ties to Lebanon. This discovery opened new avenues of investigation, but it was far from a clear path forward. Accurately identifying the baby's parents, or even narrowing down the family lineage, proved to be an intricate and painstaking process. Despite the promising early results, the search for definitive answers quickly hit a wall. Roughly a month into the investigation, another obstacle emerged. The laboratory that had been assisting in the case encountered severe limitations in their analysis. While they were able to trace some distant relatives through genetic data, the connections were weak, only stretching as far as third to fourth generation cousin. This made it nearly impossible to find any immediate family members, and the hopes that had once soared were now met with a crushing sense of frustration. The trail, though faintly warm, seemed to be cooling rapidly, and the investigators were left grappling with how to move forward in such uncertain terrain. So the Geauga County Sheriff's Department did its own research and decided to take a bold step: submit the baby's DNA to GEDmatch, a popular database for parentage tracing. After months of tireless investigation, Detective Seaman and his team meticulously built a family tree of more than 1,400 individuals, tracing the baby's origins from many parts of the world, spanning across the world, different countries. They relied on DNA samples that people had previously voluntarily provided to online databases. Finally, they found an individual with the closest DNA match on the site. This family member is Vernon Holden, who lives in Omaha, Nebraska. Without a moment's delay, detectives reached out to Vernon, identified as a third-degree cousin of the Geauga baby. Recognizing the potential importance of his connection, Vernon willingly contributed to the investigation, submitting his father-in-law's DNA to the database for further analysis. This action proved to be a pivotal turning point. With this vital new piece of the puzzle, Detective Seaman felt a renewed sense of purpose. The DNA submission acted as a beacon, illuminating a path that had long been obscured by dead ends and uncertainties. It provided the key to unlocking new leads, drawing the investigation closer to a resolution that had once seemed almost unattainable. Step by step, Seaman inched toward the truth, with this critical breakthrough bringing him ever nearer to solving the haunting mystery that had been haunting over the case for years. Vernon volunteered to help create a more comprehensive family tree for his father-in-law, a key decision in solving the 26-year cold case. Before they can continue their investigation, they must go further with clues from the family tree. As a result, several new potential suspects were interviewed. One specific clue led them back to Seidel Road, where baby Geauga was discovered. A family member recounted visiting her uncle and his pregnant girlfriend at that location on Thanksgiving 1992. Oddly, the baby was never born, and she did not hear anything more about it then. Despite many failures, the detectives remain patient and confident that with each passing day, they are getting closer to solving the mystery. In early 2019, detectives discovered that the baby was the grandchild of one of the 10 siblings, but they were unable to identify the specific parents. However, only one sibling is still alive, Harvey Eastwood, who lives in Lyndhurst, Ohio, about 30 miles from Geauga County. The tricky part is that Harvey was adopted. Although the chances were slim, the detectives decided to pay him a visit. Harvey has 2 daughters, neither of whom are from the area, and he doesn't even know where Geauga County is. After chatting with Harvey for about an hour and preparing to leave, Harvey mentioned that his children and grandchildren met their spouses at a special location. Harvey revealed that his children and grandchildren met their spouses at Camp Koinonia, just a mile from where the baby was found. Detectives asked Harvey about his son-in-law, and he revealed that Mark Ritchey, the husband of their eldest daughter, Gail, was of Lebanese descent. Gail Eastwood Ritchey, then 49 years old, was happily married and had 3 children. Detectives decided to collect DNA samples from Harvey and his wife Nancy. The results confirmed that Harvey and Nancy were the grandparents of the baby, a baby they never even knew existed. After 26 long years, the child's identity was finally revealed. That poor child is none other than the child of Gail Eastwood Ritchey. The search for the truth has led everyone to deep secrets, and now this child's story will no longer be a mystery. On May 21, 2019, detectives visited Gail at her home in Ohio. They set up outside the house early in the morning and saw her husband leave for work. Gail was in the garage getting ready for work when investigators approached. After collecting Gail's DNA, she was taken to the sheriff's office for questioning. Gail confessed to abandoning the baby and provided more details about the incident. She revealed that in the summer of 1992, when she was 22 years old, she lived with her parents and younger sister and was dating her future husband, Mark Ritchey. Gail didn't know she was pregnant until about 3 months before giving birth. Despite discovering that she was pregnant, Gail did not seek help and kept it a secret from everyone, including her family, church friends, and Mark. She emphasized that the pregnancy was easily hidden thanks to her weight of over 200 pounds. Gail admitted that she abandoned the baby and provided further details about the decision and circumstances that led to this. Gail continued her confession, recalling a day in March 1993 when she was at home in Shaker Heights, where she worked full-time as a nanny. She felt unwell and lonely while waiting for the children to come home from school. Suddenly, she felt the urge to push, and the next thing she knew, she was giving birth to a baby in the toilet. Confused and overwhelmed, Gail admitted that she didn't know what to do and that the only option she saw was to give up the baby. After placing the baby in the bag, she cleaned the bathroom to cover her tracks and placed the baby in the trunk of the car. She then continued taking care of the children for the rest of the day. A few days later, maybe a week, Gail and the baby still in the trunk of her car attended a church youth group outing at Camp Koinonia. From there, she drove several miles to Thompson Township, where she eventually abandoned the baby. She said she drove and stopped on a road she didn't know which way, then put the bag with the baby in the woods. Gail couldn't remember how far she ventured into the woods. Detectives confronted her with information from the medical examiner's report that indicated the baby had been born alive and may have screamed. They questioned Gail's intentions when she abandoned the baby and speculated that she may have always had this intention. Gail admitted that the situation came as a surprise, and she decided not to tell anyone due to fear and not knowing what to do. Gail explained that she was afraid to tell her parents about her unwanted pregnancy because her family was very strict about it. Gail always thinks of the worst-case scenario, fearing that her parents and Mark will abandon her if they know the truth. While Gail was being questioned at the sheriff's office, other investigators visited her husband Mark's home. Mark had no idea what was happening to his wife and was completely surprised when detectives informed him that Gail had given birth to a child and abandoned it. They explained how their family tree led them to Gail and Mark. Mark was shocked and didn't know what to say when he heard this story. After nearly an hour of conversation, investigators were convinced that Mark really knew nothing about Gail giving birth and abandoning the baby. Once the detectives leave the house, Mark's most important revelation is that he knows about one of Gail's pregnancies. What's amazing is that he claims it happened before 1993. Before Gail's child was born. Mark revealed that Gail later informed him that she had suffered a miscarriage. This raises the question of whether Gail is hiding more secrets and that Geauga's child is not her only abandoned child. While Gail is still being questioned, the detectives have to be frank with her. They reminded her that her DNA would be entered into the National CODIS database to store and compare DNA profiles from various sources. This is her last chance to clarify everything she has kept hidden. They asked Gail to tell about other times she had abandoned her children. She confessed that in 1991, at age 20, she went into labor in Mark's rented house in Geauga County, Ohio, and abandoned the child in the same manner as her second child. Gail gave birth to the baby in the toilet, but she didn't know if the baby was a boy or a girl because she never wanted to worry. She then placed the child in a trash bag and left him in an area with tall grass near a medical building. The detectives maintain professionalism, but they are stunned by Gail's obvious disregard for her children, who have been denied a chance at life. For years, she frequented the area where she abandoned Geauga's child along with her 3 other children, but seemed unaffected by her dark past. Gail's confession was important to authorities because it suggested a certain degree of premeditation rather than an impulsive decision. However, Gail is still allowed to return home for the time being. Before she leaves, however, detectives warn her of potential threats to her safety after 26 years of searching for justice for her abandoned baby. Now the community knows who is responsible, and this is not good news for her. News stories and articles about the incident generated widespread public attention. Gail has been a resident of Euclid for over 20 years and seems to fit in perfectly with the community. Many people found it difficult to believe that she could commit such an act. Gail was known as a wonderful wife and mother, a difficult pill to swallow for those who knew her. Meanwhile, detectives tried their best to locate the remains of Gail's first child. Sadly, it has been almost 3 decades since the incident, and although Gail has described in detail the area where she abandoned the baby, no evidence has been found. Gail's freedom did not last long because on June 6, 2019, she was taken into custody and charged with the murder of Geauga's children. The Geauga County Sheriff's Office worked very hard to solve the case. Gail Eastwood Ritchey, 49, of Euclid, Ohio, was indicted for murder and capital murder. However, she did not face charges related to the 1991 case due to lack of physical evidence. Gail pleaded not guilty and her trial began on March 31, 2022. The defense argued that Gail did not kill her baby and claimed that it was a stillborn. They argued that Gail did not do anything to intentionally cause the death, and there was not enough evidence to charge her. The medical examiner determined that having tissue from just one lung was not enough to conclusively determine whether the baby was breathing. In a typical situation, tissue samples from both lungs will be taken for more accurate conclusions. The incompleteness of this inspection report added to the ambiguity and shortcomings in the investigation process. The defense has also highlighted Gail's difficult family life. They cited her statement that she had been verbally abused by her father. Gail's family was cold, and her father declared that none of his daughters would be allowed to have children out of wedlock. The defense argued that Gail's decision to abandon the baby stemmed from extreme fear and low self-esteem. The prosecution argued that not only was Gail responsible for her child's death, but that her actions showed premeditation. They emphasized that Gail showed no remorse and that she even repeatedly referred to her children coldly throughout the interrogation. The prosecution also revealed that Gail confided in her boss, Colleen Rode, at the Noreen Lan and Mayfield Dance School about getting into trouble 2 weeks before her arrest. This admission coincided with the time investigators obtained her DNA sample, which indicated that she was aware of her guilt and the impending consequences of her actions. The trial ended after just 4 days on April 4, 2022. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict finding 51-year-old Gail Eastwood Ritchey guilty of murder. A little more than a month later, on May 24, 2022, she received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Before she was taken out of court, the judge had stern words for her, saying that she had chosen the easy way out by eliminating the only person who could not defend herself. The judge pointed out that Gail's cold and efficient elimination of her problem by killing her defenseless child was reprehensible. The judge said that calling Gail a monster may not be an unfair exaggeration. Furthermore, the judge emphasized that during the 29 years after the incident, Gail had the opportunity to marry, raise children, and do some good deeds. But she had that life on the back of an unnatural newborn force. Cheryl Jenkins, one of the women who found the baby, expressed that the traumatic event haunted her for the rest of her life. She always thought about the baby and never forgot that day. Meanwhile, Wendy, who cannot have children, has felt this pain all her life. Amid the pain, the community showed the love and care for the child that he never received from his own mother. This case is truly heartbreaking and raises difficult questions about accountability and responsibility. What